Hi everyone, welcome in. Today I figured it was about time for a new recent reads video and to talk about some of the things that I've been reading recently. So the first book that I want to talk about, because I just finished it, so it's very on my mind, is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. And I have loved every Ishiguro book that I've read so far. I've read Never Let Me Go and The Remains of the Day. And I feel like Clara and the Sun actually follows very similar themes as those two books. Clara and the Sun is about Clara, who is an artificial friend, so basically a robot whose entire purpose is to serve as a companion to a child. So Clara is waiting in the artificial friend store, waiting for a child to come choose her and take her home. And there's this one little girl named Josie who keeps coming into the store and talking to Clara, and Clara is kind of forming this relationship with her, and she really wants to go home with Josie. I think one thing that's kind of a common thread through all three of the Ishiguro books that I've read, and that really hits me really hard in all of them, and was especially true in Clara and the Sun, is the theme of kind of what it means to be alive, and not just in the surface level of being alive and being human, which obviously in a story about AI, that's kind of a thing, but on a deeper level, to live as a verb, you know, and what that means and how precious it is. And one of the things that makes it so precious is that it is so easily lost or forgotten or kind of pushed under the rug. And again, I don't know if that's a theme that is a widely acknowledged Ishiguro theme, or if that's something that is personal to me, so I'm noticing it more, but that's what every Ishiguro book I've read has made me feel. And it's a very strong feeling, and I think his books are really beautiful in that sense. I've also read a few nonfiction books recently. I read this one called The Gates of Europe, which is a history of Ukraine. Obviously this is a prevalent topic right now, and I just kind of wanted to educate myself and learn a little bit more about the history. And this book was very informative and very jam-packed with information. I will say that it might not be the best starting point if you're I don't know anything about Ukraine or Eastern European history and I just want to jump in and learn something new. Maybe read something more kind of rudimentary before reading this one, because I definitely felt a lot of the time that I did not have the foundation and the scaffolding in place to understand all of the information that was in this book, because this was dense. This book spans all the way back from the ancient Greece times to present day, and everything that has happened in Ukraine in that entire time, which is obviously a very complex history because Ukraine is involved in Europe and Russian history and Eastern Europe and even Middle East kind of, and Mediterranean stuff, and it's a lot to cover, and this book packs it in. I feel like it did a really good job of touching on a broad range of areas of Ukrainian history. We have the politics, we also have the war, the land and the geopolitical stuff, as well as the culture and kind of the people of Ukraine throughout different time periods and stuff like that. Like I said, it was very informative. It's very big. There's a lot of information in here. And then another nonfiction book that I've read also actually has a lot to do with Eastern European history. I read this book, which is called Dracula, the Prince of Many Faces. This is about Vlad the Impaler and his life and history and all of that. This was a gift from my German teacher because I did my final bachelor's paper on Dracula, the novel. He was really supportive of the whole thing, and when I was done he gave me this in case I wanted to learn about the real life Dracula. It was super duper interesting. This is just a truly wild piece of history, and I think this book, what I really liked about it was that it kind of touched on the the myths that we have of Vlad the Impaler and all of his atrocities and who he was, but then it also goes into the other identities that he kind of has that we acknowledge a little bit less. For example, he is actually widely regarded in the Romania region as a national hero, and there's a lot of stuff about how he was really seen as a leader who was for the people and stood up for peasants' rights and lower classes, and really like that this book accepted both of those things as true. You know, this is a guy who has these multiple facets of his identity that are all very equally valid and equally important. And I really enjoyed this. I also listened to an audiobook on Librofm, which, if you don't know, still is an audiobook platform that I really love because you can choose where the money from your audiobook purchases goes to, whether it is a local bookstore or a bookstore that you really like. The most recent book that I listened to on Librofm was The Temple House Vanishing, which a while ago I read The Maidens and it was not what I wanted. And so then reading this, it was like, okay, this was what I wanted, you know? This story kind of follows two timelines. One of them is a young girl who goes to this boarding school on scholarship, so she's kind of an outsider. And the main character eventually goes missing and nobody knows what happened to her. And then the other storyline is about a reporter, like 30 years later or something, who grew up in the same neighborhood as Louisa, the main character. And so she's always, you know, heard the story of her disappearance and it's been very personal to her. And now as a reporter, she really wants to write like an impactful expose article where she truly gets to the bottom and finds the true story about what happened to her. Again, this was the dark academia mystery vibes that I have been wanting from a book, and they've all been falling short, and this one finally delivered and I was just really excited. Another book that I read was this young adult book. It's called The Book of Living Secrets by Madeline Rue. And this was a really interesting concept. It is about these two teenage girls who are best friends and they really love this book. It's like this old-timey romance book. Picture like a Jane Austen book, right? And they love it. And one day, the kind of occult witchy shop that they like to go to and get their tarot cards and their crystals and stuff, a guy that's in there tells them that he has a spell that can transport them into the world of their favorite book. And they're obviously thinking that like, it's obviously not gonna work, but like what's the harm in, you know, having this guy do it? Whatever, it'll be like a fun event for them. But the thing is that it works and they get transported into this book. But when they get to the world that the book is set in, it's like not a Regency romance. It is a straight up Cthulhu situation. There's a cult, there's a monster in the ocean who demands sacrifices. People are like dying off left and right and like being called by the ocean monster to walk into the sea, and like stuff's bad. And I think it was so funny because the explanation for that is that the book that they were reading was from the point of view of the rich people, the elite people in this society. So of course they're not affected by this stuff. And there's like this class divide of people who are allowed to pretend that everything's fine and we're just in a Regency romance when actually they're living, and like the lower classes in their society are living in a nightmare. And I don't know, I liked it a lot. And also one of the main characters is gay and there's like a sapphic romance going on, and this was so interesting and so good. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so the rest of the books in this video are all going to be Penguin Teen arcs that I was sent very kindly from Penguin Teen. So thank you, Penguin Teen, for these arcs. And all of these books are either already out and available to read, or they will be within like the next week. So the first one that I want to talk about is Beauty and the Besharam. This was really cute. This is about a girl in high school who is just always told that she is too much. You know, she's too loud, she stands up for herself too much, she has too strong of opinions. And that's kind of like an identity that she's always carried with her, for better or for worse. She has this guy that goes to her school too, who they used to be friends when they were kids, but now they hate each other and they are enemies because he did something that really hurt her and really offended her when they were kids. And not only that, but they also have a rivalry going on because they're both like the top students of their class and they're both always competing for like the top spot. And this summer, the main character over the summers, she works at a princess party service where, you know, she dresses up like a princess and goes to kids' birthday parties and stuff. And this summer she is cast as Ariel, and the guy that she hates is cast as Prince Eric. And so they have to spend the whole summer together playing Ariel and Prince Eric. And, you know, I'm sure we can all imagine where things go from there. I really liked this book a lot. It was cute. The main character was a really nice character to read about because she has like what people perceive as her flaws, but then she actually has her actual flaws, and sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not, and she's just kind of working through it all. It was a really good coming of age story. It was a really cute romance. It was just highly recommend. Another Penguin Teen arc that I got that was very kind of like romance based was Zyla and Kai. So this story starts off at the end of the senior year where the senior class is on a field trip to this amusement park, and Zyla and Kai, these two students, go missing. And everybody is trying to figure out where they went and what happened to them. Some people think that they ran away together, but that doesn't really make sense because Zyla and Kai have been broken up and have not spoken to each other for months. So this story also kind of follows two storylines. One of them is that, with interviews and little snippets and like clips from the police trying to figure out what is going on and where these kids are. But then the other storyline follows the entire timeline of Zyla and Kai's relationship from the time that they meet over the summer and as they fall in love and eventually as they break up and go their separate ways. I thought that that was a really interesting setup. The whole point of this book is to really examine like this relationship between these two teenagers and all the kinds of like struggles and obstacles that they went through and what their relationship means for their own personal lives and their futures and stuff like that. I thought it was a really good portrayal of a teenage relationship actually, because I don't know, when I was reading it, sometimes my adult brain, like my grown person brain, was like, what are they doing? Like, these kids are being ridiculous. Why can't they just listen to their parents? Or like, why can't they just do this or blah, blah, blah. But then like the piece of my brain that remembers being a teenager was like, no, that's literally how it was. Yeah, again, I highly recommend this. I think that this is a great YA book. I also recently read Hotel Magnifique, which is, you know, I would really compare it to Caraval or The Night Circus. It is about this magical hotel that will just randomly appear in a city. It appears in a different city every morning. And the thing that makes this hotel so special is that it is pretty much the only place in the world where magic is allowed to be used and can happen, and they can create like this beautiful magical atmosphere. Again, very Night Circus, very Caraval-esque inside of this hotel. Our main characters are two sisters who are living in this gross city that they absolutely hate and they just want to get out of it, but they're very poor, they're orphans, and they're just very trapped in their situation. But they see an opportunity to kind of get out and explore the world and make something of themselves with the opportunity to work in this hotel. However, once they get into the hotel and start working, it becomes apparent that their contracts are magically binding contracts that are not what they originally thought or seemed to be. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this. It was a fun read. It was very atmospheric. I don't think that this is like super groundbreaking. Like I said, it's kind of doing a lot of the same things as other books that have come out have as well, but it was a good read. It was enjoyable. And then the last two Penguin Teen arcs that I want to talk about are both vampire themed. I'm apparently like on a Dracula vampire kick recently, but I will talk first about the one that I did not like, and then we can finish on a good note on the one that I did enjoy. So the one that I did not like, unfortunately, was Go Hunt Me, and I think this is by Kelly DeVos, which was weird to me because her other book, Eat Your Heart Out, was so good and I loved it, and I thought it did an amazing job of taking like this horror trope. It's a zombie summer camp book, and like taking all of these horror tropes and like, I don't know, just breathing new life into them and making them funny and satirical and meaningful and having a lot of like social commentary and meaning behind them. But this one just didn't do anything for me. It's about this group of students. They are like student filmmakers and their dream is to become directors or actresses or producers or whatever. And they all team up and they want to make like a really, really good film so that they can use it on their college applications and get into good schools and stuff like that. And randomly, this opportunity falls in their lap. They are offered the opportunity to go spend the summer in Europe in a castle that was rumored to be like Dracula's actual castle and make their movie there in the castle. But of course, once they get there to the castle, everything starts going wonky and getting scary, and it's very typical like slasher film where these kids start getting picked off one by some killer that's in the castle, killing them off. And that sounded like a super fun premise to me. I loved that concept and I had really high hopes for this, but unfortunately it felt like it didn't quite work. I never felt like that being scared and that like intense like suspense of looming danger or anything like that. Yeah, there's not really much else that I can say without getting into spoiler territory, but overall I just yeah, this was like disappointing to me. But on the bright side, after that, I read Youngblood, which was so freaking good. This story, it has everything, okay? It's a vampire story. The vampires are at a boarding school. There's a sapphic vampire romance. And also there's a lot of like, I thought really nuanced social commentary. Some of it does feel very surface level, like, oh, the vampires are social activists. But as the story goes on and like all of the world building that the author does to create like this vampire society and this lore behind societal challenges that vampire society has faced throughout the years and how they responded to it and what the consequences of that response are, but also if they had responded in a different way, what would the consequences of that have been? Like, it gets very nuanced and it gets very complex, and I just really appreciated that. I think it was really cool in a teen book to have such a like complex and fleshed out way of looking at social issues, so I really appreciated that. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this. So those are some of the books that I have been reading recently. I've been having a good reading time lately. Let me know in the comments what you have been reading lately, or if there's anything that you have just loved recently. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that I get to talk to you soon. Bye!